Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective, hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Corey, and our local Dom expert, Shark. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listening. Fans. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey, and in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. It's hard to
everyone.
win it.
I'm
Oh
Shark.
my God. No, I was giving it a
I'm Shark,
dramatic.
the Dom expert.
I was giving it a dramatic pause before I jumped right into it. Oh my gosh. All right. Well,
I'm filling in for Dom today, everyone. I'm Shark.
oh my God. Well, everyone, it's hard to win it once, let alone twice. The Florida Panthers are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, bringing Lord Stanley back to the Sunshine State for the fourth time in 6 years, with this team rapidly approaching dynasty status. Will there be a club in the near future who can actually stop them? Maybe. The offseason will determine many things, but this team and Bill Zito have definitely proven that even when they lose players, it does not diminish their ability to win and compete at the highest level. But that is a discussion for the future because we are talking about now, or at least then and now. I say, in my opinion, that we can never, or that we can only ever fully judge a goal, a play, a series, a season in hindsight, and we have finally eclipsed the apex of that point. The offseason starts today. So today, we'll be introducing a segment that may not be particularly new, but being given a new and fitting name at least. Quote, from a fan perspective, unquote. We'll use this to judge and discuss what we just witnessed, a fantastic Stanley Cup final, one with legacy implications and heartbreaking ones all the same. Dom, or should I say Shark?
Yeah, I mean, wow. We've seen this a couple of times in the last 5 years, and dynasties and building consistently in hockey is one of the hardest things to do. And out of all the major sports, this is the hardest sport to repeat in, with how competitive it is, how many games, how many injuries there are. We talk about it all the time, Corey. It's the hardest cup to win. You have to win 16 games to win that trophy, on top of having a strong season, as we've talked about. That, and to do that back-to-back years, make it to 3 straight finals, and then have Tampa have done that beforehand not so long ago. What is going on? What are they putting in the water down there in Florida that is just making these teams incredible?
A lack of taxes, evidently. That's what most people would say in this current moment. I don't know.
That does help. There's a part of that is legitimate, though, because we talked about it just a little bit with Mikko Rantanen. Dallas doesn't have a state income tax either, or Texas doesn't, so Dallas therefore by extension. So they can give a slightly smaller contract, and the player can get the same amount of money that they would. Like a $14 million in Winnipeg is about the same as a $12 million in Dallas. So that makes a difference, and that can help in the long run if you're trying to sign a lot of players and repeat on these runs.
And I mean, they certainly have also found a way to pull out the best in some players that were disregarded. Players like Sam Reinhart, like Sam Bennett, like lots of Sams. Sam, I don't know, lots of Sams in Florida. But I mean, they've taken a lot of Buffalo Sabres, strangely, Kyle Okposo, and they've made them Stanley Cup. Evan Rodriguez. Man, Buffalo really needs to stop giving players to the Florida Panthers is what I'm realizing from this.
Buffalo needs to stop giving away players, period. Like, Buffalo had Jack Eichel. Buffalo had all of these players that you've mentioned and many more, and they're scattered across the league, but pretty much all of them are on playoff teams. So Buffalo just needs to figure their shit out, because they've had a good job drafting talent, but they haven't been able to make it all mesh together and fit with their system. So I don't know if it's necessarily a front office problem, because they clearly can draft well and have a good scouting department to find the talent, but they don't know how to put it all together. So is that coaching? Is that just living in Buffalo? Is that an ownership problem where there's not enough investment, commitment, belief in the team that they feel supported? It's hard to say, because again, a lot of talented players have come out of Buffalo. They've traded away and away and away and keep saying this will be our year and rally in like the final third of the season some, but it still doesn't matter if they've already missed the playoffs by the time they start to win games.
Yep, very true. I'm going to put a kibosh on this current statement because before we jump into any of our analysis here, we want to lay out the remainder of our season here at the Captain Avalanche Fancast. We are planning 2 more episodes, including this one that you are currently listening to. Next week, there will be no episode. I know. Don't cry, everyone. It's okay. But we are going to wait until post NHL draft, as well as for the start of free agency, to have a full and healthy episode so Dom can discuss the Sharks' actions within the draft, and we can both discuss what is shaping up to be, in my mind, an intriguing and fun free agent carousel. That will come out around July 1st or 2nd. I'm thinking probably more like July 2nd, just so we give free agency at least a day, because we're not live streamers. We gotta bring it to you after it's happened. So for now, we'll reserve, though, our lengthy thank yous for next week, where we will also highlight some of our favorite moments from both the hockey season as well as our season here at the Captain Avalanche Fancast. But I will say thank you for tuning in this week. We are already missing hockey as we speak. Oh, well, at least I am. I know Dom absolutely hates the sport of hockey, so I know he isn't missing it at all. I'm sorry, Dom. I'm not gonna slander you like that.
No, Dom clearly doesn't miss it. He's missing this episode. That shows how little he cares. He had to call me to step in as Mr. Shark here. But no, God. In all honesty, I am missing hockey as well. I'm gonna stop making bad jokes with that bit, and just be happy to be talking here, because it's it's bittersweet coming to the end of a season like this, where I think we've talked about it. We're really, I think, proud of the season we've put together and to have made it this far, Corey. And I know we're going to do more of this next episode, but just a quick thank you to everyone who listens, because you help support us and reinvigorate this passion for us to keep us going. And please forgive us for not coming to you with an episode next week. Although if I'm not jumping ahead of the gun here, Corey, I do think our last episode, if we record on Tuesday the 1st or the 2nd and it comes out 2nd or the 3rd, is it possible that that's a bit of a longer episode with how much we might want to cover between the draft, free agency, and maybe highlights from our season? It
certainly could be a season finale extravaganza, but I really never know how long these are going to end up being until we actually do it. We say it might be longer, but I'm sure it'll end up around our typical time anyway if we divide it up properly. I think we'd go like draft, then we'd go free agency, then we'd go highlights and thank yous, and I think that would be a nice 2-hour round out to the end of the season. But who knows? If we go 4 hours, we go 4 hours. I'm kidding. That's not what's going to happen, everybody. We actually want you to sit and listen to the episode. This isn't a Christopher Nolan movie, although some of them have been pretty close.
We've unintentionally done our best to make a long episode just when we get on a roll. And Truly. My apologies for that. I know I can ramble, but I think we've also learned through the season and done our best to try to keep it within a reasonable cap and recenter when we need to. So with that, I took us a little away from the Cup final there for a second. So Corey,
it's all good.
How do we process this Cup final? What do we want to talk about first?
What do you mean you took us away from the Cup final? I said I'm going to kibosh anything about the Cup final until I say all this spiel. Not to mention, Dom, I am the king of tangents. You cannot even hold a candle to how much tangentialness that I get on. So get out of here. Nerd. Anyway, though, before we get into that, last little thing here is I usually say this at the end, but I figured it would be smart to say this early on. Our goal is to hit 20 followers on Spotify by the conclusion of our season. So if you're a regular Spotify listener and you haven't hit follow, please do. And if you're listening regularly, why the heck haven't you hit follow? We are currently at 17 followers. That is just 3 people away, and one of them can be you, and it would genuinely make a world of difference to us to help us achieve even that small goal.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that, Corey. And yes, everyone, please do. I know it's a small number, it sounds like, but to us, every follower is a big deal, because we said at the very beginning, if this podcast brings happiness, brings joy, just a love of hockey, sharing our passion to even just a couple people, that makes all the world of difference. So every one of you that likes and who is actively listening, that we really appreciate that. And that makes us so happy, because then we hope and believe that we can have that positive impact that we set out to do.
Truly. And I could not have said it better myself. But now without further ado, the Stanley Cup from a fan perspective. I thought a great way to go about this series would be to break it down how we always do, but perhaps with a bit more finesse and structure. After all, this is a fan cast with everything meant to be from a fan perspective, from Dom and mine's perspective. There may have been times that I or the show tried to be something else, but every week I think we did a better job carving out and finding our identity. So let's look at this series through that fan perspective. Maybe there's some numbers here and there because I simply just love stats and analytics, but really, let's just talk about what the heck we saw on the ice from our couch's standpoint, just as you mentioned, Dom. So first, for me, the Oilers' best versus the Panthers' best. This series truly was an all-time classic with 6 entertaining games, 3 of which were tightly contested action movies with scoring and competition abound. However, I latched on to something that Leon Draisaitl was quoted saying before Game 6, and that was, "You still haven't seen the Oilers' best." Now, I understand what his intent was behind this quote, that the Oilers have allowed the Panthers to flex too hard, and the Oilers had been undisciplined and hadn't played to the systems that made them successful in other series, or perhaps simply that he believed that his team had another gear to reach to overcome the obstacles in front of them. And I mean no disrespect when I say this, but I do wonder where that best had been in games 1 through 5 and why we hadn't seen it to this point. And I'm not even talking about him as an individual's best, because he had 33 points. Connor McDavid had 33 points. I'll talk about that again and again. I'm talking about the whole team, because in my opinion, if you as a team haven't had your best in games 1 through 5, you probably aren't going to suddenly find it in an elimination game on the road when you were just dismantled at home. And Dom, I'm just going to keep rolling here, but feel free to jump in anytime if something catches your attention and you want to add something. But the Oilers, at their very best, pushed the Panthers hard. Their raw offensive skill from all skaters and areas of the ice kept games close and tense. Every skater had a high skill ceiling and could take advantage of opportunities and shots that perhaps seemed suboptimal, but could find their way through the Panthers' defense anyways. In these close games, they could stretch them to overtime, where if they could just keep pushing, they could find that heroic moment and win the hockey game in some of the most insane coin flips of games I had ever had the pleasure of witnessing. I believe the Oilers' best was in Game 1, where they did what I just described and frankly dominated the OT period, where they kept the Panthers on their heels almost the whole time and finally forced the Cats into a mistake in the form of a costly puck over the glass and capitalized to take an epic win to start the series. However, when the Panthers were at their best, it was simply a completely different game. The Oilers won 2 of the 3 coin flip games, but the Panthers won 3 games convincingly. Some liked to point to refereeing as a consistent issue and one that plagued the Oilers and that the Panthers got away with many. I'm of the mindset that it happened on both ends, and the Oilers certainly didn't help themselves in situations like Game 3, where there were so many penalties it wasn't even funny. The Panthers thrive in that environment because, as we discussed on a previous episode, the Oilers did exactly what the Panthers wanted them to do. What about in games 5 and 6, where there were very little in terms of penalties? The Panthers dominated then too. People often commented to me at certain points that the Oilers just looked like they stopped trying, and I didn't see that at all. What I saw was a team that had been grinded to dust. The Panthers had successfully worn the Oilers down both physically and mentally so that they couldn't bring themselves to the level that they perhaps expected of themselves. Injuries can certainly be a factor. After all, there is lots of luck involved to win a Stanley Cup. Sometimes you can be the better team but lose to an opponent who is simply healthier, but I don't believe that to be the case here. Zach Hyman is a key contributor to the Oilers, but I don't feel as though his presence would have changed the ultimate fate. That being the Panthers beating the Oilers in an even more convincing fashion than last year. And I may be wrong, and some people may disagree with me, and that's fine, but we all saw what we saw. Zach Hyman told the Oilers' locker room after their 2024 loss that he knew the team would be back here. He was right, but perhaps he should have clarified the circumstances. I can't lie, I don't necessarily feel overjoyed or happy with the outcome of the series. I feel content, but I cannot imagine how much more this loss hurts within the Oilers' locker room. But someone always has to lose. 15 other teams do, but no team feels it quite as hard as the team that comes in second. In part one.
I think that's well said. Boom. I think I said it last episode or perhaps the one before. The biggest loser is the person who comes in second to win 12 games to get that far. In the Oilers' case, win 14 games, be 2 away from getting your name etched on the cup for eternity, and to fall short. That is incredibly painful. On top of the back of last season, you also said how this one is more painful than last year, and it's true. I think there was a sense of similarity in that last year when the games were closer. Florida was able to. It was a coin flip, and Edmonton actually was able to take like 2 out of 3, and that happened last year as well when Edmonton also went on that comeback tour when they were down 3-0 in the series. So that series at the start last year felt more dominant, but then by the end it went to a game 7, and there were a lot of close moments. This series, it was either close, and like you said, we got 4 overtimes in 3 games, but those games happened more often than not in Edmonton. Like what I think is important here is home ice advantage. Edmonton had that this year, and the fact is that Florida had an easier time playing in Edmonton than Edmonton had playing in Florida, and we're able to turn that home ice advantage, take it away from Edmonton, and that makes a huge difference because it makes it feel like this was more dominant as well. They had the home ice advantage last year. This year they didn't, so they're coming in at a potential disadvantage in a long series. And then they were able to go into Edmonton and dominate. Like game 5, they won this series because you just knew, you just had that sense that the way they manhandled Edmonton when Edmonton's at home, have just tied up this series, right? They could be bouncing back. Florida is like, nope, we're not going to fall into that trap. We're not going to let these guys go on a run on us and start to dig our grave. We're going to punch back and punch hard. And that's what they did. And you're right. I think missing a star player like Hyman that obviously hurts a team, but that's not an injury bug. That's not the cause of your depth problem. When your next highest scorer after the obvious in Draisaitl, McDavid, who are going to get theirs, they're going to dominate. That's what they do. They are superstars. That's why you pay them as much as you pay them. But they are not 4 lines. And so then when your next highest scorer is Corey Perry at the age of 40, like that tells you something. Whereas the depth the Panthers showed, like this, the perfect example is Brad Marchand. He absolutely dominated in this series. If giving the Conn Smythe trophy was just for this series, I believe he would have won it because of how much of an impact he made. And he took that third line and made it basically like a top line of any other team in the league. And it really, when you talk about grinding, that line really wore down Edmonton in particular.
Yeah. I can certainly agree with that, and you are definitely bringing up some important points that I'll discuss here in a little bit when I talk about, I think, superstars and a balanced attack, but we're not quite there yet for me because I actually, if you'll let me, wanted to talk about goaltending next. What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, goaltending fallacy. An interesting statement I heard someone say recently was, to win the Stanley Cup, you need a true number 1 to carry you all the way through to victory, because that is what Bob did for the Panthers in back-to-back years. I, put it simply, don't agree with this. They aren't wrong per se, because it can lead to victory, as we've seen, but I don't think it's the only way. This person then referenced goaltenders from the last 5 years of champions, asked including the Avalanche, and named Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper was not the sole reason the Avalanche won the Cup in 2022 in terms of goaltending. Pavel Francouz was instrumental in ensuring the Avalanche continued their dominance and piloted the Avs through 2 of their first-round games against the Predators, and then won all 4 games against the Oilers. He was a perfect 6-0 and 6-0-0 in his starts. There are more examples like this from other Cup runs from other teams, like the Penguins. Sometimes your starter gets injured, which is why your backup can't just be a throwaway. It takes 2 tendies to win because you simply never know. Looking at this series in a bubble, Sergei Bobrovsky was incredible. He had a .919 save percentage and faced more shots than Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard combined. 210 to be exact, with only 17 getting by in 6 games. He made many key saves that kept, and that includes only 3 goals in games 5 and 6, by the way. He made many key saves that kept the Panthers in the games where the Oilers did manage some hefty pushback and shut down any comeback attempts, minus game 4, where he still made 30 saves. Meanwhile, Stuart Skinner had an .861 save percentage, and Calvin Pickard had an .878, letting a combined 25 goals in on only 186 shots against. Pucks were getting passed more often on fewer chances. I never hang it all on a goaltender or goaltenders. After all, as we discussed, the Panthers are simply dominant, simply better. But these numbers still aren't enough to put you over the hump. Both of these goaltenders were so strange to me. Stuart Skinner had a bad start to the playoffs, so Calvin Pickard comes in and saves the day and is literally perfect in net until he's injured. Then Stuart Skinner gets his redemption arc and pitches back-to-back shutouts against Dallas and halts any hope they had of even being in the series. But with the mountaintop in view, they both faltered. And I'm not trying to say, or I'm not trying to shit on either of them, because I don't know why this happened. They both demonstrated that they can play at high levels against incredibly talented teams, but the Panthers were simply too much and got the saves when they needed them. I am curious now as to what the Oilers plan to do next. The Avalanche, for example, put trust in Georgiev after a strong playoff performance, as they should have, but when they saw it was no longer working, they cut ties. So I am incredibly intrigued to see what the Oilers do this offseason and going into next season in terms of their goaltending. And thin on that part. What do you got, Dom?
Well, I think something you said just to me directly offline, I don't think it was something we talked about here on the podcast at any point.
Yeah.
But you described how watching how Florida played in front of Bobrovsky, because you're right, Edmonton did have the higher shot count in a lot of these games. They were the offensively pushing team, but Florida converted on their opportunities and converted more than they did last year. They did a better job scoring goals this series. And that's a huge thing. But you said how Edmonton's players did not seem confident playing in front of Stuart Skinner before he was pulled. Calvin Pickard came in and really brought Edmonton back into game 4 and is the reason that they were able to win that game. But you said it, that they were playing, like you could tell Edmonton's playing without confidence in front of Stuart Skinner. And there is a legitimate question. He's up for a new contract. How do you pay the man? Because until this series, he had a well plus 900 save percentage. He had multiple shutouts. He's gotten you back to consecutive Stanley Cup finals. And he's so equally capable of laying a goose egg and having an awful period that takes your team out of it. How do you pay this man? What do you do? This is an opportunity for Edmonton to decide to move on at the end of this contract and decide maybe he's not worth the price that he's going to cost. And if they need to try something different to keep moving on. However, the flip side or the catch-22 of that is this is a really weak goaltender market this offseason. We're not talking about any star power starters who are going to be available. So they're kind of in a rock and a hard place, and it makes me not concerned for them necessarily because it doesn't impact me what happens in Edmonton. They're on their own journey, but it makes me wonder how they handle this, because unlike Florida, who I think could bounce back and be here again next year for a third cup in a row and really, like you said, cement dynasty status, I don't think Edmonton has that capability. I think in a sense they've hit their ceiling because they have the offensive star power. They have defensemen who have the capability to be stars and are paid like it, but typically underplay their contracts. But the big issue has been in net, and that has been the big issue for years now, is the consistency in net. And both of these guys can give you really good games, but can really give you bad ones too. So there's no clear starter, there's no clear successor either. So I don't see how they get better moving forward.
And I mean, okay, I'll start with this. One, you're exactly right. And I mean, we saw the same thing with the Avalanche in Georgiev, where not only did the organization as a whole lose trust in him, but the players playing in front of him lost trust in him. And you could tell in the way that they played, they were often scrambling in front of their own net, trying their best to just keep it away from Georgiev because they just didn't believe that he wasn't going to make the save because he had proven time and time again that even simple shots that were just meant to test him were getting through, and they shouldn't be. And I think we saw, as you mentioned, something very similar here with Stuart Skinner. And I think for the last few years, goaltending has been a massive issue for the Oilers, and inconsistent goaltending at that, where they have goaltenders that can elevate. For example, Mike Smith. They made it to the Western Conference Finals that year off of the back of Mike Smith, but then, they ran into the Colorado Avalanche and suddenly Mike Smith was letting beach balls through. So I think they keep finding goaltenders who can elevate and play well, but then can also fall apart all the same. And you saw when the Avalanche finally got that stability in net that they played so differently, so much more calmly, so much more confidently. And I think that's what the Florida Panthers demonstrated all playoffs, not just the series, but all playoffs. Because even when Bob had a rough game, they didn't care because they knew next game he was probably going to be fine more than anything. I don't think Bob ever put bad games back to back. Even when he was letting in more than 3 goals, he was still making like 30 plus saves, which is insane. So, yeah, the problem is if the Oilers really want to get a better, at least starter, I don't know if they can afford it, especially if they want to pay Evan Bouchard. They need to pay Connor McDavid here coming up. And, not to say that they necessarily couldn't with the cap still continuing to rise over the next few years, but obviously, they have their priorities in locking up these superstars who, without a doubt, have amazing playoff performances. I will not deny that. As much of a Connor McDavid, hater of the Glazers I am. I don't necessarily hate the man himself, but hate the Glaze. You're running into a situation that Toronto ran into where you're investing all of your money into your top players, and you're ending up with a weaker team beneath them because of it. You're ending up with a weaker goaltending tandem because of it. And the Avs, and I believe that it's going to pay off in the end. Fuck me, I could be wrong, but I truly believe it's going to pay off in the end. Said, no, we're not going to fall into that trap. And they let go of Mikko Rantanen. Not easy, but they let go of him. And now they can afford to pay a second line center. They can afford to actually get a quality goaltending tandem in net. And now their team overall has some of the best center depth in the league and feels great. Of course, I'm going to bring the Avs into this somehow, everybody. This is Captain Avalanche Fancast, but that's just, I just don't know if the Oilers is heading in the right direction, because you're right. Maybe we have seen their peak, because last year they took them all the way to 7 in a series that they probably still could have won. This year, ultimately, it wasn't really all that close, even in the games that they won. And that's what I'm trying to say is, while the Oilers still won 2 games and pushed the Panthers at certain points, when the Panthers really turned it on, they crushed them. And it didn't matter where it was, just like you said.
Well, and in those overtime wins, the Panthers were the better team in overtime consistently. This whole playoffs, but also in this series, and it was on those counter punches when Edmonton would get the McDavid-Draisaitl combo, get an odd man rush, something like that, and have to capitalize on those moments where their offense had a chance to be at its peak. But overall, Florida was the better team throughout most of the OT periods that we saw. Quick correction, actually, both Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard are signed for next season. It is the following season that they're unrestricted free agents, which makes them both potentially open for trades, but also means they can start negotiating contract extensions on July 1st. So just wanted to correct myself there. But you're right, Evan Bouchard is a restricted free agent. They have to re-sign him. He's the youngest member of their defense, along with Ty Emberson, who's signed for $1.3 million for the next 2 years. But they have an aging defensive core. Matthias Ekholm has got one more season on his $6 million AAV contract at the age of 35 right now. Kulak is 31. Jake Wallman, who they picked up from the Sharks this season, he has one more season under contract. He's 29. They can't pay everybody. And Darnell Nurse is eating up so much money on that defense, and it just feels more and more like a bad contract. They also supposedly are trying to pay Trent Frederick a decent amount. Supposedly, I've heard numbers such as $6 million AAV for the next 8 years.
They already extended him.
It has not gone through officially. It is not like fully. I think it's signed in principle, but it has not actually been physically signed. From what I can tell, it's not on Puckpedia yet.
Oh yeah, I see that reportedly. Yeah.
So you sign him for $6 million a year for 8
Four.
years.
They have him at 4. They have him at 4 for 8.
Oh, 4?
4 by
Okay.
8.
Well, 4 is a lot better number. I thought they were going to do 6, so that's a lot better number.
It's
for them.
pretty much confirmed at this point. 4 by 8 for Trent.
Yeah, so you're committing to him for the long term. You're going to be paying Connor McDavid, probably going to negotiate that this offseason so you don't risk him hitting the open market, because at a certain point,
million.
He's done this. Yeah, he's $16 million. At a certain point, though, if you're Connor McDavid, you legitimately need to consider and have one eye on what other teams would be interested and able to pay you. Because you've done this, you've run this back with the Oilers and gone to back-to-back finals and somehow regressed. The team does not feel like it is ascending. It is going backwards with no succession plan that's clear for goaltending. A guy like that wants to win. So you got to wonder if he should at least be not locking himself in and not considering the potential somewhere else. I think it's the right thing to be considerate of your own team, loyal to a fan base, a franchise that's loyal to you and is willing to pay you a big number to show that. But if you want to win, you have to be willing to at least have the corner of your eye on what other opportunities are out there. So one just has to wonder if they don't sign McDavid early on in this upcoming season, like before the end of 2025, does he go somewhere else?
Well, and I mean, based on some of his interviews now following the final, his responses kind of indicate what you just said. Although someone made a good point that maybe he's saying it to maybe put some more pressure on management and the team to create a better team around him. But it's like, I respect that. But if you want that, no offense, you have to be willing to take less, even with the cap going up. And I'm not saying that like Leon Draisaitl doesn't deserve $14 million. That dude is insane. Most of the time, he's actually the best player on the Oilers, which is insane to say. But, you know, if you want to pay Connor McDavid upwards of 15, 16 million, which again, not saying he doesn't deserve it. You want to pay Evan Bouchard, 11.25 by 8. I don't know if I'd say he deserves that, but all these players are great. They deserve to get paid, but you only have so much money to pay people. And the more you put into the top, the less you can put into the bottom. And unless you have the most insane scout staff who know how to take these undervalued players and sign them, as Dom would say, sign for reasonable, it's hard, especially with people wanting more. And I mean, certainly people may not necessarily be taking long-term deals because, that cap is going up. So they'll maybe take less years in order to then get paid more later. So I'm not ultimately saying I know what the Oilers should do, nor am I going to suggest what they should do because they're not my team. I'm just talking about them from this perspective only. I'm not going to say how their team should be run. I'm more just, I think, putting food for thought out there and kind of just perseverating on the topic.
And fair enough. They have, $12 million almost in cap space this offseason, but only 4 room for new contracts on their active roster and 11 total standard contracts with a bunch of free agents. So this I just don't see how this roster changes a lot to next year. They'd have to be wheeling and dealing a lot of different trades in there, and to also just still find a way to pay everybody how much they intend to pay them. I mean, yeah, let's say Trent Frederick, if it's $4 million, that drops him down to just under $8 million in cap space. Is Corey Perry hanging him up? Is he going somewhere else? Is Jeff Skinner? He's underperformed expectations somewhat. Connor Brown, Kasperi Kapanen, those guys were filling out their roster. If you're paying Evan Bouchard a lot, I mean, you have to move a contract at that point. If there's only 8 in cap space available and you still have to pay a few other people, you have to move a contract just to get him 10. And then the question is, which one of their guys do they move? Can they move a guy like Matthias Ekholm, and how much do they have to retain in that type of a deal? So, I don't see how this team gets better next season unless they really, really go aggressive and are willing to trade a lot and get super active in that sense here early on in free agency. The following year, they have 64 plus million in cap space right now, and hardly anybody signed through the 2026-2027 season, their full roster. They have a lot of opportunity there. If that's the year a new McDavid extension kicks in, it's just, what's the vision? What is the plan? If I'm McDavid and I see that, it's like, you have an opening. What is the plan for when we hit this point? Because this season is a natural stepping off point, this upcoming one, and you hit your pinnacle, and it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of gotten worse. You're not getting better, and I don't see how you get better next year. So 3 straight seasons trending downward. I don't know. I don't see it. Their cup window with their talents is by no means closed, but it feels like, in how competitive the West is, it just feels less open. Like the door is not just wide open that it did last year when they first made the run.
Man, those Holloway and Broberg guys would have been fucking helpful in these playoffs, huh? But we've talked about Connor McDavid a lot here, so I'd like to kind of get into my final segment here about this final, and then I have a couple little tidbits after, but this is my final big segment here, and that's superstars and a balanced attack. Connor McDavid is one man. Leon Draisaitl is one man. They each had 33 points in these playoffs, which sets records and should be commended. But I believe the expectations put on these two individuals in the ultimate team sport is kind of insane. The Panthers know who these two are, and they did everything in their power to swallow them. Pause. They managed to limit them to barely a point a game, which should be commended, and they still got over a point a game in the finals. They kept Connor McDavid to a single goal. They also kept Evan Bouchard to a goal. And the same with Evander Kane, and other key contributors for the Oilers were held off the score sheet. McDavid and Draisaitl can't do it alone, and they certainly hadn't been doing so in the entirety of the playoffs up to this final series, but the Oilers had a much deeper team than I gave them credit for. Hell, every player on the Oilers who played at least one game had at least a goal. 20 skaters. The Panthers, though, had 19 skaters with at least a goal. And the Panthers' highest point producers only managed 23 points, but, that also being said, they had players who, let me just take a quick look here, and forgive me for not being as prepared. They had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players with 20 points, and then 1, 2, 3 more players with 15 or more points, right? And the Panthers just had a more balanced attack. Every single line was a scoring threat. Yes, they have superstars you want to watch out for, but none to the level of McDavid or Draisaitl that you need to dedicate 2 or 3 defenders to. And you can just keep naming names, and it truly didn't matter who the Panthers put out there on the ice. They could get it done. They then got elevations from unlikely places, similar to how Corey Perry at 40 elevated for the Oilers. Brad Marchand at 37 did it for the Panthers, but he did it in the final. No assists, just 6 goals. He had 10 goals in total in the playoffs. 6 were in the final. That line in general, that third line, was a nightmare for the Oilers to contain. So even when the Panthers' superstars weren't going, Barkov was struggling, Verhaeghe wasn't putting it in the back of the net. You have to worry because someone would get it into the back of the net. When the Oilers' superstars weren't scoring, no one was. Leon Draisaitl had 4 goals in the series, with 2 being in Game 1, including an OT game winner and then another OT game winner in Game 4. He did score when it mattered. So did Brad Marchand. And so did Sam Reinhart. And so did Sam Bennett. And so did Sam Bennett. He is only one man.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think there's, when you talk about the depth of consistency, Reinhart stepped up. He actually led the Panthers with 7 goals and 3 assists in this series.
In all fairness, he got 4 of those goals in the final game.
Fair enough, but man still was able to show up, and as far as I'm concerned, when you enforce your will like that in a final game, it still matters. It counts for something.
No, absolutely.
You silenced any doubters. You handled this thing with dominance to finish, and part of that was those 4 goals. But also for Verhaeghe, yes, it wasn't his best series, but he still was second on the team in points with 8 assists. So he was still out there on the ice making a difference. Had an 8 plus minus.
Absolutely.
So when he was on the ice, that was huge for the Panthers, even if he's not putting in the back of the net, which you can't really say that for the Oilers because it is those superstar caliber players where if they're out there and not scoring, you're losing. If Draisaitl and McDavid in the minutes they're out there aren't putting the puck in the back of the net, there aren't enough pucks going into the net for your team to win over the course of a series. One game, maybe. A series, we've seen it play out 2 years in a row now that it doesn't work for them. And, you know, it's something just while I'm on the Panthers, and I know we're trying to pivot from Edmonton a little bit, I would just like to say that, you know, this team could very easily three-peat. The fact that they do have contracts that are reasonable. Alex Barkov taking $10 million. He might not be the biggest offensive producer, but that feels really fair and sets a line for everyone. The fact that Kachuk's at 9.5, and those guys are both signed through 2030. Reinhart at 8.6 through 2032. Verhaeghe at 7 through 2033. There's that culture. And so you feel like Brad Marchand, with 19 million in cap space, he's going to be back.
I don't think so.
3 years.
I
think he's going to be back. I think they have the space for him to be there. I think he found a great home for himself. And the Sharks have been in rumors and they should go for Marchand. And so if the door's open, please do. We got the cap space and we can give him more per year for a 3-year contract. We have money to burn. So I would love to see him come to the Sharks. I would snap up that jersey instantly.
Who doesn't want Marchand? Who doesn't want Marchand after a performance like that? Everybody wants Marchand. I want Marchand. Everybody always says that he's the worst guy to play against. You never want to play against him, but damn, do you want to play? You want to play with him. You want him to play for you. Real quickly, I wanted to go back to your point about some of the Oilers being minuses and the Panthers being pluses. Looking at this right here, of every Oilers skater who skated in the final, nearly all of them were a minus except for 1, 2, 3, 4 players who skated in the final. And most of them were straight zeros. There was only two players with, so 5. 2 players with a plus, and it was a +1 for a total of minus 42. Whereas the Panthers only had 4 players who were a minus, and they had a +41 on the whole. I know plus minus isn't the only stat you should be looking at, but I think that's still kind of insane that every single player on the Oilers nearly got outworked, got outplayed, and then almost none of the players on the Panthers got outplayed. The only players who are minuses, there's one defenseman who's a minus, which is Nico Mikkola, and then the rest are like 4th line guys. That's insane.
Well, and that's what we should also focus on, and who the pluses are for the Oilers. Because when your biggest minuses are Draisaitl and McDavid, when you're telling me, or what we've been saying here together, is that your offense and your success is driven by those 2 players, where on the whole of it, they have the worst minus. And Corey Perry, your top 3 scorers combined for a -20 when they were on the ice this series. That plus minus is not always the best stat, but when your star players who you're counting on, you want them on the ice as much as possible, are also still getting shredded while they're on the ice and are net negative, and by that much, that is a time when the plus minus matters. Because when Vasily Podkolzin, something like that,
Vasily Podkolzin,
and Kasperi Kapanen, Victor Arvidsson, Jeff Skinner, when these guys who didn't have great series, Matthias Janmark, when those guys are the only guys who are positive, it's just because they're not playing on the ice as much. And if they are, it's in periods of time when Florida has already got a big lead and they're kind of coasting. You know, so their time on ice is lower, and that explains why their plus minus isn't worse. It's not like they were helping your team in the net so much as Florida wasn't hurting their stat line. So I think this is a time when plus minus actually captures what's at the root of the issue.
Well, the issue is the Panthers just, like I said before, they just ate them alive. And that's why I'm saying I don't necessarily put a lot of blame and pressure on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, because the Panthers, whether it was clean or not, got out there whenever they were on the ice and stopped them from doing anything. And even then, they still got stuff done. So that should be commended that they still managed to get more than a point per game somehow. Now, and I mean,
Agreed.
I can't remember if this was at the conclusion of the series or going into the final game, but the Panthers' time leading was at 200 minutes and 25 seconds, whereas the Oilers only led for 33 minutes and 51 seconds. That's how you win series. Fuck, the Avalanche were the only anomaly where the team leading the entire series somehow still lost. Which is why it sucks even more. Sorry, Dom,
you said
ahead.
it. The Panthers had 7 point per game or better players, compared to Edmonton having 3. And I agree with you. I'm not saying this is anything bad about McDavid or Draisaitl. I'm saying this is why the Edmonton formula will not work. Because if you are relying on these guys with how many minutes you put them out there, you're relying on them to carry your offense. And even when they are having a good game, it's not enough. Because Florida is swarming. They are going to shut those guys down. You don't have enough threat to them to force them to balance out their defense and not commit so much energy to pushing those guys, because they're also like those shifts that they're out there, you're going full sprint every time you're on the ice, right? You're giving 100%. Right. But when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are on the ice, you dig deeper and find that extra 10% that you didn't know was in you, and you have to play that much harder than before just because of how much pressure, just the knowledge that they're on the ice and what their reputation, and it's well earned, brings with them. You have to be on your A game and playing better than your average best, right? You have to be at your absolute peak when you're playing against them, because they will punish you if you're not. But you can do that. You can have those harder shifts. You can expend more energy on those shifts because you have the depth of guys who can play that same defensive style and smother the other lines, also not even having to be as smothering. And you can almost, other shifts, if you're out there matching up against Edmonton's third line, almost are a little bit of a rest compared to the energy you expend when you're facing their top line. And that, again, why I'm saying this is not a diss on Draisaitl or McDavid. Both are amazing superstars, all-stars for their entire careers, I'm sure. But when you rely on them, it's just a flawed system. It's a flawed process. It's Toronto with their core 4. That's not how you win in a hockey tournament, because that's what this is. This tournament, it's long, it's grueling. You need a lot of consistency. I'd rather have 9 really good players, or good players who are worth $6+ million per year, even if they don't take that much, than have 3 who are taking $10+ million per year and are superstars, because that's 3 lines versus 1 in effect, right? I would much rather take the good team that has all well-rounded than the team with great top end. And it's just a range of outcomes. You know what? That's what it is. Let's go statistics with it. There is a wider factor of error, a wider standard deviation on the possible outcomes, and it brings down their median, because their top end, absolutely, their highs will be the highest. Like that you're not beating really that McDavid Draisaitl top end when they're at their best, unless maybe you're the Avs top line, because they can go toe to toe. But you're also not, when you can smother them like Florida can. That bottom line for Edmonton's really bad for a team that's making the Stanley Cup final, and Florida was consistent there in the middle. Something we haven't said yet. You told me the stat, Corey, but how many goals did they score during the first period in every game? So starting games well, forcing Edmonton to be on the back foot. When you don't have consistent scoring.
2 first period goals every game. Every game.
So every game, Edmonton's having to play catch up, and they don't have the depth to play that way. They don't have the strength behind those superstars to be playing from behind, playing frantically, because that also is forcing your superstars to pick up even more minutes, which is going to make their averages and their stats look worse and be part of their bad plus-minus stat as well.
Way to use some nerd speak there, Dom. What a nerd! You're a nerd! No, I'm kidding. But we also did see that, to criticize the Avs a little bit here, we did see that with the Avs too, where we just saw that a top-heavy system, it doesn't work. It can get you far, it can get you a lot, but it doesn't get you the win. Like the Avalanche, when they won in 2022, yeah, they had a 3-headed monster in McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen. But the rest of their team was also just violently deep. Like every line could score with that team. But Dom, ultimately, do you know what fueled this victory for the Panthers? Do you know what fueled this victory? It's a simple answer, Dom. Dairy Queen.
He
Anyway.
needs some milk.
I wasn't thinking of that one, though. I cannot wait until we see the video of them when there's just like a full 3 vats of ice cream in the top of that, and they're just all eating Dairy Queen together
I know
out of
it.
the cup.
I see it
it's
coming.
gonna happen. It's not if, it's when, and I can't wait.
Did you see that they also broke the cup? They broke the cup apart. Like, they didn't dent it like the Avs. They ripped it.
Oh yeah, they ripped the top, and then they actually still also dented the bottom. However, they actually did similar damage. It's about on par with what happened last year, and the number of times this cup has this cup has seen a lot of life, but it has always been fixed back to its sterling best by the end.
Oh yeah, and I thought it was cool getting away from the actual series here that the first time Stanley Cup winners on the Panthers were who got to hoist the cup first. So I thought that was a really cool move by the Panthers.
Absolutely. I think that's a classy move. And that shows, again, the team camaraderie where they don't have this ego. The one other benefit of not being superstars, you don't necessarily have that ego, and it's all about this team style, the buy-in to the team chemistry and for the team. And when you've done this last year, you've been there, done that, and yeah, you've done the amazing thing and gone back to back. Why not let the younger guys who haven't done this before, the new guys on the team, get to hoist it first, especially if it's their first time hoisting it at all? Like that it's the way it should be. And I don't think every team in the NHL would be like that. So just, again, props to them, their locker room, that setup, just the respect they have for one another is also top tier.
I don't know if you heard the voicemail that Brad Marchand's kids left for him. First of all, I didn't even know Brad Marchand was a dad. I believe I could tell that he was a dad of 3. Let me make sure I'm not speaking shit. Yeah, he has 3 kids. That's insane. I didn't even know that. But you listen to the voicemail, and it was just the cutest thing ever. It warms your heart. And I never liked Brad Marchand before this. But he's friends with Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby. He's a Nova Scotia boy. And god damn it, he made it hard to not root for him. With his Dairy Queen antics and him just being himself. I hate it. Why do you like him? Why?
Well, it's like what everyone said. You hate to play against him. But if you're not playing against him as a neutral, he's a lot of fun. He's done a lot of random bullshit in his time, and he will forever be King Rat. I think his time in Florida has cemented that just from them actually throwing rats at him as the Rat King. But, he's still a funny guy and super genuine out there. And all of the antics, all the shit talking, everything he does, he actually backs it up with his play. So it's just like the difference between ego and confidence. It's only egotistical if you don't back it up. But if you back it up, you own it, you can talk the talk if you walk the walk. And he does.
Yes, he does. Well, Dom, thank you for going on that journey with me and everyone else. I've hit the end of everything I think I want to say about the Stanley Cup Finals, although I'm sure I will think of something randomly as we go throughout the rest of our episode here. But we have milked this cow dry, I think. How are you feeling?
The only thing, we talked a little bit about goaltenders, so just one thing I wanted to say or just pose a question.
Please.
Because we've said that this team, especially with $19 million in cap space, they can and should be back in the playoffs next year and should retain at least 2 of their big players, of the guys that are going to be free agents. Sergei Bobrovsky has 1 more year on his contract at $10 million, and the man is 36. So they have all these young stars who are all in their late 20s or early 30s, and they've got this core locked down. Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, Verhaeghe for a long time. Anton Lundell as well, who he's super young. He projects to be a huge part of their core going into the future. Seth Jones now, Gustav Forsling, some great defense locked up at a reasonable price for a long time, especially for Forsling.
Forsling's insane,
the question
by the way.
Yeah, he gets $5.75 million.
He was a waiver pickup. He was a waiver pickup. What the?
And he gets basically not half, but just a little over half of what Darnell Nurse makes. It's kind of insane to me, and he's taking that until 2032. They got him locked up for a long time. So this team's cup window is open for a very long time. However, the asterisk on that, they could be at risk of turning into something a little bit like Edmonton, because I don't know what the goalie market looks like for a year from now, but Bobrovsky only has so much time left in him. And it's really hard as those years start to tick up. As a goaltender on the knees, on the back, it can be really hard, and you don't always see it because they don't always have the same injuries, but the end can come, the cliff, the drop-off can be very steep. And we all have a lot of respect for Bob, but you have to know just inherently that the time is limited, and Father Time comes for us all. So that's my only question, and we don't have to answer it today, but moving forward after next season, how do the Panthers stay at the pinnacle? How do they stay relevant in the conversation? What is that succession plan like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wanted to say, you said the Oilers have 18 million in cap space, then started talking about the Panthers players, so I was confused for a second. But just so nobody else is confused, we're talking about the Panthers cap situation in regards to their goaltending and everything. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that right now. What I did want to say was congratulations to Vitek Vanacek, by the way, for now being a Stanley Cup champion. Good for him. So there you go, Dom. You at least got one Shark who got to be Stanley Cup champion this year. So I think that's pretty neato. Oh,
more than one. Nico Sturm also went to Florida.
That's right. I forgot. Sturmy also went to Florida. He's a two-time Stanley Cup champion. So good for him.
And I believe, I could be incorrect, but the names Jonah Gadjevich and Tomasz Nosek. I know for certain Nosek has had at least a small stint with the Sharks early in his career.
Was a rookie this year, I believe.
He's 26, so...
Oh, well, then I'm stupid.
He was drafted by Vancouver. Maybe that's what it is. He was on the Sharks. I was right. From 2021 to 2023. There
you go.
He was a fourth-line style guy, not putting up a ton of points, kind of consistent with what he did in Florida. But I think that makes four former Sharks players who were able to get their name on the cup this year.
AJ Greer was also a former Avalanche and Eagles player. So there you go, Avs fans. We did have somebody there in the trenches. Although Calvin Pickard was a Avalanche draft pick, actually. So you wanted somebody to really root for in that regard, you could have gone that direction. But I'm happy that somebody who is formerly affiliated with the Avs also won the Stanley Cup. But yeah, what's crazy with Nico Sturm is he was a deadline acquisition both times. I think we got him, I want to say, from the Wild when we picked him up, and then he came in, won with us, and then the Panthers got him from the Sharks. So lucky. Damn, that dude just gets picked up at the right times. Good for him, honestly.
He's like the reverse Corey Perry, moving at the deadline, going to the finals, but he's the one who takes it down.
Yeah, no kidding. What a series. And now hockey's over, and I'm sad. There's no more hockey. I've already been sad because there's been no Avs hockey, but now there's no hockey at all. But at least we have some entertainment for the next couple weeks in regards to the draft and then free agency. So we at least have something to keep us satiated. And then we have the long run to October 7th, everybody. It's 110 days, and I'll be counting every single one.
Yeah, seriously, I will not be able to keep track like you will. I'll end up forgetting because of my memory. But thank you for keeping track for both of us. And yeah, I also it can't come back soon enough. This is really is the greatest sport to watch. And I know we say that and we're big fans and we're biased, but I think for those of you who have started watching hockey this year or are newer to the game and have happened to find us, I hope you feel that too, and that I'm not just putting this out there, because I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
Truly. Well, I do have some, I think, really positive Avalanche news, I want to say, at least from my perspective, if we're ready for that.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, first of all, everyone is trying to trade Martin Necas. Do you know who isn't trying to trade Martin Necas? The fucking Avalanche. Everybody else outside the Avalanche is like, oh, the Avalanche need to do this. Oh, the Avalanche need to trade Coyle. Oh, they need to do that. They need to do this. They need to clear cap space. they need to fucking trade all these guys. Well, fuck, if the Avalanche don't trade anybody, there are very few spots that they're actually missing. And don't forget that if they get rid of somebody, they also need to find somebody to fill that hole. You don't just remove somebody and suddenly there's some mysterious unpaid player who takes in that spot. So, I don't know, I think we've mentioned this before, but Elliot Friedman is the ultimate insider in the NHL. When he says something, you can believe it because he has the most amount of connections around the league. He is so incredibly well informed. So when he says something, listen to what he says. And recently on his podcast, 32 Thoughts, he stated this, and I'll read it directly quoted what he says. And I'll link the article as well. Elliot Friedman says, quote, "You know, it's interesting about Colorado. I was talking to someone about them, and there's all this noise around Netchus now all of a sudden. And someone said to me, if you look at Colorado's situation, depending on what happens to Drouin, and that's, excuse me, I'm not really sure what's going to happen there. They only have to 1 or 2 players to sign. They don't have a lot of cap room, but they got to sign Sam Malinsky, who's a very solid young defenseman. But other than that, they don't have a lot of business they necessarily have to do. So, you know, I know people are looking at the roster and saying they got to clear space. I don't know that Colorado feels that way. I think they kind of look at it like, you know, there are a lot of rumors about Charlie Coyle. It sounds to me like that's a lot of teams looking at Colorado's roster and saying, well, they have to do something. I could see the Avalanche saying, nah, we're good like this. Can never have too many centers. The only thing I've heard, they traded for Lindgren, who's probably going to go to market. I've heard they wouldn't mind another defenseman with a bit of jam or edge to them, but I've heard they're not, just because other people may look at them and say they're too tight to the cap. They got to make a move. I'm not convinced they think that, unquote. To then, oh God, how do you say Kyle's fucking name here? Kyle B. I can't say his last fucking name. This is too much of a struggle. He then says, quote, no, well, especially how they started last year with all of the injuries, but now teams are going to try and tell them, look, you can't go into the season with all those players. Yeah, no, I'll take a look, or take that over the alternative. Thank you, close quote. To which Elliott responds, quote, I'm not sure. Again, it's always one of those situations where I could be proven wrong, but I don't think Colorado's convinced that they have to do anything. They like how this looks on paper, close quote. So yeah, essentially they think that Ryan Lindgren and Jimmy Vesey are going to be hitting the open market, which is totally fair. But otherwise, you know, I agree. Coyle is a bit overpaid as a third line center. The Avalanche didn't make the contract, the Bruins did. And as we talked about before, it was a miss that they didn't get him to retain, but I don't see why you'd want to get rid of him if he's there. And not to mention, if he does what he needs to do next season, you can re-sign him to a short-term, I think, much better deal contract going into the future. So why not? Why not keep him? And so I like this because they're exactly right that there has been so much noise about this team and their players. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what they do. I still hope they find a way to get out from under the Miles Wood contract, because there are plenty of people who I think can take his place for a cheaper deal, especially because that third line's figured out. You know, they have guys that they can pay less to play, I think, better minutes than he does. So ultimately, I think take a deep breath, especially going into the future. I think the Avalanche are going to be okay.
Hey, and you're right. They are going to be okay looking to the future. I think the only concern I have is, you're right, on the offensive side, if you can get rid of Miles Wood's contract, that's all the better. You can sign some league minimums to fill out those roles, or give some more of your prospects the chance to make the step up. The issue for me, and Sam Malinsky is important to get re-signed, because right now you only have 5 defensemen on the roster, and you only have 1.2 million. So that's my concern.
For sure.
Is you need more than 5. Ideally, you want 7 or 8 as available. And so I think that might be why the goal should be to retain Lindgren if you can. And I agree with that approach. I just think he's going to want more.
Oh, yeah.
And with the cap going up, I think he's going to be able to get it elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
He's young enough that I think he'll be more open to moving. But that's where if you sign Malinsky and you give Eric Johnson another 1-year veterans minimum contract, then you're fine. And that solves that whole problem. right there, right? And so then if, like you said, if you can offload a contract like Miles Wood, which doesn't give you a ton of space, but just enough wiggle room that you should be able to get through it okay. I think you're actually right. I know I was one of the proponents saying you're going to have to trade Charlie Coyle in possibility. But I think you're right that the Avs don't have a lot of needs, especially not on the offense, not on the goaltending. So they don't need to be going and making moves. They just need to have a better draw and win more regular season games as a unit now that they're not off the deadline, so that they can host Game 7 versus Dallas or take the whole Central.
Not to mention, the Avalanche have their top pair figured out. It's not like they're trying to find, top or even second pairing defensemen. They need, one or two bottom pair defensemen. And unfortunately, I like Jonathan Drouin. If they can find a way to keep him, I think that's great. I genuinely hope they can. I don't know if they will, but I mean, Jonathan Drouin was a top 6 guy while the team was in flux. He did great. He had a lot of injuries last year, but again, at this point, unfortunately, I think he's the odd man out. I don't know where he fits anymore, because he's somebody who's suited for more minutes, and when he was on the third line, he just wasn't doing as well. And unfortunately, he's great for depth if somebody gets injured on the top 6. But I mean, you still got to pay him, so I don't know.
Well, I think the question is do you trust Jonathan Drouin to play as your third line center? And
well, Jonathan Drouin's a winger. He's a winger.
I see on Puckpedia that he does have center listed.
Puckpedia is fucking wrong, and they're dumb. He's a winger.
Okay. So then that answers that question. Then I fully agree you don't have room for him.
Charlie Coyle is the third line center. That's Charlie Coyle.
I know he is. It just, since it said that center's on Drouin's thing,
I understand.
like that would be the only option. Is I don't think you can have both. You could have one or the other if he can play center. If he can't play center, I think the signings that they were able to make, and by keeping Brock Nelson, I think that put the final nail in the coffin of the ability to bring back Drouin.
And I like Brock Nelson. I think that was the right choice, in my opinion. And it's so funny because I'm seeing some people outside the Avs circle be very judgmental of that, which is fine. Be judgmental all you want. I think it's going to make the Avs a better team for it. But ultimately, that's where we stand. I don't think they're going to trade Netches. That is a top 10 scorer either way. So why get rid of him? I'm sure they'll figure something out, but that is tomorrow's problem right now. Like I said, they do need to hop on that train and make sure they get a deal done. They can't kick rocks with this. They need to get it done. But we'll begin to see more stuff kind of trickle in over the next few days. It's already started. Dom's going to talk about it, so I'm not going to spoil it. But I got 2 more things here. Jonathan Toews. He has apparently narrowed his picks down to the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche. And Jonathan Toews is a 3-time Stanley Cup champion. He was a captain. He has a lot of high experience, a lot of great playmaking ability. No, thank you. No, thank you, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's not even to do that he hasn't played in 2 years. That's certainly a component, but we've seen that players who have had a long absence can still come back and be a great player. Although Gabriel Landeskog, I think, was still keeping himself in the hockey mindset, whereas Jonathan Toews kind of had to go on like a healing journey. It's an interesting story. Go and read it. But another thing is he was also a figure within that Kyle Beach case with the Blackhawks. And, you talk about somebody with leadership qualities. Do you? If you let one of your teammates get hurt and decided not to say anything, I don't know if I want you on my team, man, to be perfectly honest. Not to mention he's a center. The Avalanche have 5 centers on their team. 5 good centers, in my opinion. And I don't see a reason for him to come to this team, to be honest with you. I mean, if he comes to the team, fine, as long as it's on a very, very cheap deal. But I don't know how I feel about it, to be totally honest with you, from that perspective.
I I think he hurts if you bring him to the team. It hurts the team's chemistry. It's not improving your bottom line or your top line for that matter. Because I do care more about the 2 years of rust. And if you're only giving him a short contract, that's not a lot of time to have him get back up to speed. I'm surprised for some reason. I thought the Ducks were actually the front runners. So that was I clearly have been behind on the updates in regards to his contracts. I mean, he's not going to get much wherever he goes. I think with the way they've been set up and how guys have been taking deals, when you said it, Winnipeg doesn't not make sense, especially if they're trying to change something. And, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to play at home and not have to move like that and be, I mean, truly the most home you can be, and that's why those players stay. There's nothing better to do really in Winnipeg. We've talked about it. It's not the greatest place to live and have an active lifestyle, but they are committed to their hockey team. So a well-known hockey player finishing out his career there and coming back to it, having a resurgence, that really does make a lot of sense. And I think with their current cap situation and being the President's Trophy team, but not being able to make it deep, they're a team who should try that influx of talent. I don't think it'll help the Avs. I don't think it's in anything beneficial to the Avalanche, like you said, Corey. So we're fully on the same page there.
Yeah. Fun fact, Winnipeg also tried to trade for Netchus, and they couldn't do it, and the Avs got him instead. There were so many players that Winnipeg wanted that went to the Avs instead. So,
I mean, Colorado's that much better of a place to live.
It's a good place to live, good players. Like, I don't know.
They didn't. It's not that long ago that they won the Cup.
Exactly.
Versus up in Winnipeg. So I mean that doesn't always have an effect on players, but a certain recency bias is valid if a system has shown it can work. And if you think you could flourish within that system, why wouldn't you want to go there instead of the bit more of the unknown, the team known for choking, kind of like Toronto?
Yep. And I mean, it's funny because it's like he can pick whatever team all he wants. That team still has to sign him. Like he could say, I want to play for the Colorado Avalanche. Awesome, dude. The Avalanche have to mutually agree to that fact. So again, if they sign him, there's nothing that I can do about it from my end other than voice how I feel about it. And it does make me feel kind of icky. And again, I do believe that people can change. I do believe that people can recognize, the error in their ways. They can make progress towards themselves and recognize where they went wrong. But, that's just something that, the ripples are still being felt even today. I mean, hell, look at the current case going on in London, Ontario right now with the World Junior scandal. I'm good. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you for everything you've done. You can go play in Winnipeg, dog. That's how I feel.
And agree with you there. I want to backtrack to one little thing you said there, and it was like he can want to play in Colorado all he wants.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet so would you, Corey. You'd love to play for Colorado. And you don't even play hockey, but that's the point. Like, anyone here in Colorado would want to play. All kinds of people who play in college, guys that are in the European leagues, in Sweden, in Finland, in the KHL. There's so many people who would want to play for this team. So, yeah, buddy, you're a multiple-time Stanley Cup champion. You're also coming back from retirement, have all those other scandals, like you said. You're going to be just messing up the rhythm and the flow. You're going to come in like a bit of a bombshell, just going off, even if you're not trying to. So it's not the right move. It's going to wreck with the team's chemistry. The only reason you should do that is if a team needs a wake-up call.
And I by no means, wish ill upon him as a person. I don't hope he gets hit by a fucking bus or anything, or that he breaks his fucking leg, but I just don't want him on the Avalanche. Plain and simple. There is one final note I have here, and that's the Avalanche prophecy. That's right. When there is a Florida team on the brink of dynasty status, on the brink of 3 back-to-back Stanley Cups, who is the team who can stop these dynasties? The Colorado Avalanche.
I'm just gonna let it ride there. I'm gonna let you put in the sound effects because I'm not messing with that flow, that setup, anything. I feel like I can only wreck it.
It's so funny because some people say, I have a thought, and then they say that prophecy, and it's like, yes, a lot of people have said the same thing, but it's really funny. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to include that in my predictions next season, because I could totally see Florida going back to the Stanley Cup final for a 4th time. I don't, especially if this offseason goes well, if they get at least Bennett and Ekblad back, I don't see why they couldn't go and do it again. But yeah, that's going to be the thing that I ride. I think it's pretty fun. And I think it could actually happen that the Avalanche are once again the dynasty destroyers. So here's hoping that that happens. That'd be pretty fun. That would be pretty darn fun. So that was my last little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, and it would be really fun. I said it at points to you. I don't know if we said it on here, but I think they would have given a better challenge, been able to roll lines or meet the
Yeah.
physicality more naturally without getting out of their game against Florida. So, I would love to see it happen. You can manifest that prophecy into existence.
I hope so.
Just got to say, I feel like I've maybe been wrong about Florida so far in talking about do I think they could run it back, because for some reason I thought they had less cap space than 19 million, and with the fact just looking over their contracts today and how many guys are at a reasonable price.
They do have 7 players they need to re-sign though with that 19 million.
Yes, but you have this core, and some of those players are guys that were picked up at the trade deadline, like a Cody Ceci type of thing. They're a little bit more replaceable with how much depth you have on that team.
Oh yeah.
So I think I was wrong about them being able to sign both Bennett and Ekblad, because looking at it, I do think they actually could make that happen. And if they are able to do that, there's no reason that they shouldn't be the favorites to win the Cup next year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough because Bennett definitely raised his price tag, but we'll see if they can convince him to stick around for less. But I mean, once again, Bill Zito has shown that even if he loses players, it really doesn't matter. He knows how to find the guys that can come and plug in and fix whatever problems they may have. So, I mean, all the credit to them.
Well, and it's not about the best guys, it's about the right guys.
That's right.
And then they play their best for him. And that can be his argument to Bennett and saying like, "Hey, you done this 2 times. I understand you're worth more money and I'm going to pay you more, but let's look at what everybody else is taking on this team as well." He has a benchmark of all these players who are signed for, the only player signed for 10 plus million is Barkov. Everybody, and that's
Bobrovsky.
Well, and Bobrovsky. But everybody else, when we talk about all this star power that they have taken really fair and team-friendly contracts, thinking about it overall and where the cap is going. It sets the ability to say that message is like, hey, have you enjoyed winning these back-to-back cups and continuing to make this bank and playing with these people in this system? Then how much is that worth to you? Because we would like to keep you at 8.5 million and pay you something like that instead of paying you 11 or pay you 9. And if you do that and then you give Ekblad 8, yeah, that's 17 of your 19 million. But with all the wheeling and dealing he's been able to do, he can fill out the rest because he has 2 top pairings, check mark. The top 8 forwards figured out for the next 7 years, check mark. The rest of it's incidental for him at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the interesting part, right? Is I always think about, why would you not want to sign for less on a team that could possibly, go back to another, Stanley Cup final and do it again? But some dudes just, they want to get more. And so it's always an interesting thought to me. Like, if I were an athlete, I'd be like, cool, I'll take fucking $6 million to keep playing here and dominate for the next few years. But that is just so rarely how it ends up working. So it's weird. It's weird. I'm not saying something's right or wrong. It's interesting. That's all.
Well, yeah, you're right. And we've kind of had this conversation before as well, so we don't have to get too into it, but it's about what is better. Like, if you have a family long term, is it better to move them and take more money, and get as much money as you can, because your career stops at a certain point, and then you either need to have a secondary career figured out, ready to go ahead of time, or you're going straight into retirement before you're 40 or when you're 40. And that's a long time to be retired and then still be taking care of your family. If you have kids, if you want them to go to college, whatever it might be, there's a lot of expenses for the rest of your life there that you're trying to make as much money up front. And so there is a legitimate question, and I think it varies person to person depending on age, family status, and just preferred place to live. These factors that have nothing to do with hockey at all. And we will never be able to know. All we can do as the media and as fans is speculate and hope that it works out the way we want it to. But ultimately, no one except for that player and their family and their agent can be inside the mind and know what is their preference and what is their happiest scenario.
Yep, for sure. Well, Dom, I know you told me that you didn't have much to share today, but keeping in the theme of fun new names, I'm going to pass it on to you. It's time for In the Hall with Dom.
Thanks, Corey. And yeah, I don't have the most ever to share from a Sharks perspective. But for those of you listening, you might be asking, in the hall with Dom? Why are we in the hall? What happened to the tank? Isn't he a fish out of water at that point? Well, I mean, it depends. If it's the hall of like a Walmart and there's a fish tank section, then maybe we'd be okay. But alas, not to be confused with the hall you walk into. No, no, no. This is the Hall of Fame that we're talking about. And then you might be asking, well, Dominic, what Sharks players are going to the NHL Hall of Fame? Is Couture going to the Sharks Hall of Fame right away, even though you just did that for Marleau and Thornton? Those type of questions would be valid questions, but the answer to any of those would be no, in fact not. It is actually the team mascot, the GOAT. S.J. Sharkey has become the third mascot in NHL history to be voted into and inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I have to say, I love him as a mascot. He's a lot of fun. And actually doing some research into this, he is one of the most active mascots in the NHL with over 400 events and appearances booked per year on average. That's more than one per day. That is insane to be showing up to multiple events and be constantly working. And not only that, but doing some crazy death-defying stunts from the top of the arena going back for many years. So a really fun mascot, a really cool just emblem of the franchise. Great energy, been to so many of the All-Star games, 25 of them to be exact. But, you know, for lack of a better word, and it's going to be punny, but he always causes a splash whenever S.J. Sharkey shows up. So that is the piece of Sharks news I can share with you today. But I'm really happy to share it because as far as mascots go, they don't get much better than Sharkey.
Do you know who the other two are? I don't know.
I do.
I'm genuinely asking.
So do you know who the mascots are for the Montreal Canadiens and the Chicago Blackhawks?
Oh yeah, Youppi and the Blackhawks one.
Huh? Yeah, the Blackhawks
one.
Well, his name is Tommy Hawk, so I think Sharky's a better name, but Youppi is quite the name. That's a hard one to beat, but I think the way I think it's a benefit of being a Shark. It's easier to have a great mascot that fits naturally, but he's also just so fun and playful. Like like whoever designed the costume did a very good job.
Yeah.
But the energy, the character, the actor underneath the person really lives up to the hype. Like when you think about the stuff we talked about when he got kicked in the face with the soccer ball by Will Smith and MacLeod, and he flopped and went for the bit, and he does those things all the time. Like he's really interactive with the team, with the fans, and so it's totally random and it has nothing to do with the hockey on the ice. But it does a lot for the spirit of being a fan and was a huge symbol for me as a kid. Like I still have my magnetic S.J. Sharkey that is waving to me as he's at my desk at work. So it's something that was important to me and I think for a lot of Sharks fans.
Yeah, and I mean, no offense when I say this, when your team is hot ass, it really genuinely to me helps when your mascot has a lot of energy because, you know, everybody's kind of down that the team on the ice is not producing a great result. But when your mascot, regardless of that, is still having a great time, doing a lot of great things, including charity work on and off the ice, I think it means a lot. And it keeps that. I think that's one of the reasons why the energy was still so good in the building all the time, despite the product on the ice.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, that's like I said, he's always around. He is visible and going to appearances in San Jose, sometimes comes with the team on the road as well, and is not afraid to make appearances in the opposing team's building if allowed. So crazy antics. I mean, they call him the hardest working fish in sports, and I think he's earned that title quite well. And, you know, it's like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head with the energy aspect. Because even when I went to games like a year or two ago, we've been in this rebuild for a little bit, and it's been ugly. He was still there, bringing energy, really being interactive with the fans, and it's always a lot of fun. And he's super good as well with pictures with the kids and everything from what I've seen at Sharks games I've been at.
So yeah, it's pretty great, honestly. So congratulations to S.J. Sharkey. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we do love S.J. Sharkey in this house and are very happy for him. Congrats from all of us here. Even if you're not a Sharks fan, I'm going to congratulate Sharkey on your behalf because he's awesome.
Yeah.
But the Sharks do not have any other news since we last spoke. They still stand at a whopping $41.75 million in cap space to lead the whole NHL. So a lot of moves to be made, hopefully here with the draft in a week's time and the start of free agency not much long after that, like just another 6 days or 4 days actually after. So really excited to bring you a bigger update in our finale as far as the contracts go. I've already previewed some of what could happen. So let's pivot and talk about contracts around the NHL like I've been doing and tracking some of the big names who have signed. And I'll start with the former Shark who just this morning, as we're recording, of course, it'll be yesterday when you hear this tomorrow, Fabian Zetterlund has re-signed with the Ottawa Senators for a 3-year contract with a total value of $12.825 million. So that is 4.275 AAV. And this is one that I think was a little interesting to me. As a restricted free agent at the age of 25, he will be a UFA when this contract expires, and he will be only 28. So there's a lot of flexibility depending on where he does on this contract, where he could go moving forward. Because he certainly wanted to be paid more than this based on his performance with the Sharks, but he came in and was not putting up nearly as many points with Ottawa after the trade at the deadline. He was also being downsized from second line minutes to fourth line minutes oftentimes, and that whole different style of play. So a really interesting one that I was watching to see how this contract would work out. I think it's a fair deal. It's a short term, 3 years, over $4 million. So he's still getting a raise in pay, but maybe not as much as he wanted. But it's a prove it deal because he will still be young enough that with a year left on this contract when he's 27, if he has really outplayed his contract, he is someone that can ask for a lot of money early or potentially be a mover at a trade deadline to end up on a cup contending team. That's not to say Ottawa has really over exceeded expectations, I think, a bit this year and has put themselves into the hunt in the East. So this could also potentially be a place he ends up in long term. But that is the former Shark who signed. Before I start throwing other names, Corey, anything to say for Fabian Zetterlund?
Other than I'm so sorry that you traded him and he's still not a part of the Sharks.
You know, it's okay. I think ultimately, I think it was probably the right move because the Sharks were able to improve their center depth, their draft equity, and we'll see what Mike Grier does with that. But I think looking at the prospects in the pool and the thought of like if we do draft Michael Misa and then have Chernyshov playing next to him, and that's 2/3 of your second line figured out, and then you have 2/3 of your top line figured out with Macklin and Will Smith, and then there's still Tyler Toffoli for a couple of years. Your top six starts to fill out really quickly, and I think he would have been dropped back because also Eklund, who we're going to extend this summer as well. There's your top six. Potentially looking at the Sharks for next year.
Yeah.
I'm pretty fucking happy with that top six if that's the case. So Fabian would end up on the third line at best, I think, and would probably be wanting more money than the third line was worth. And so it could have been a sticky situation with potential arbitration in San Jose. So ultimately, I think this is probably best for him as a player. And the Sharks organization there's a lot of positives looking to the future, and I think Mike Grier has his eyes set on a higher ceiling than what he believes Zetterlund can provide. And so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's done a wonderful job so far in this rebuild, and now we'll get to see him actually acquire some assets and build and put this team together more. So I'm excited to give him the benefit of the doubt and see that vision come together.
Fair enough. Real quick, just came across my radar. Did not know that Charlie Coyle was a Sharks draft. That's interesting. Anyway.
Oh, wow. I don't know if
2010.
I knew that either. Oh, wow. That's a while back.
But I don't think he ever played for him.
No, I don't think so either. I believe he was traded to Boston fairly early
Oh,
on.
Minnesota. He played for Minnesota first.
That's right. That makes more sense.
Yeah, just interesting.
Other contracts of note that have come out here just within the past 48 hours. Matt Rempe, someone that actually there were rumors talking about the Sharks trying to offer sheet Matt Rempe to bring a bit more of that edge and physicality to the bottom six. I had mixed feelings about that, so no need to perseverate, to speculate, or anything on the matter, he has been re-signed by the New York Rangers to a 2-year contract at a cap hit of $975,000 AAV, which will keep him a restricted free agent when that contract expires, so the Rangers can still reevaluate and have him be cost controlled, while he also has a chance to get more adjusted and polish his NHL game so he's not such a headhunter.
Yeah, true. The Rentmaster, Matt Rendy. Hell yeah, it's Sunday Night Raw. Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah, honestly, if he does end up just crashing out of the NHL, he should go to the WWE. I mean,
Honestly.
a lot of former athletes have been doing that. It would be the perfect fit for him. He would have a great time.
It'd be funny.
Another contract signed yesterday was Ryan Donato, the 29-year-old center now of the Chicago Blackhawks as of this past season, or maybe the one prior. He's moved around a lot over the last few years, I feel like, so I don't remember if it was this past season was his first with the team or his second. But either way, he's going to be staying with the Chicago Blackhawks for the next 4 years at a very reasonable contract hit of $4 million per year. So he clearly believes in Chicago's rebuild and is willing to make a fair deal with the team because he was really a leading performer. He had a big impact on the team this year. He was the leading
performer.
Right, with you think about Bedard and everything, and that's what everyone's mind is going to go. But he really stepped up. So to take only $4 million per year, he clearly buys into the vision of the future and the potential and wanted to make sure more money was there available for them to fill out this roster. And taking a 4-year deal means he can still continue to improve over these next few years and ask for even more, ask for like a long-term end of career contract, like a 5-year something for $8 million or something like that to finish out his career if he keeps playing the way he did this year.
Well,
so,
yeah. All right.
No, go for it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's what we were talking about before is players are taking shorter term for, in theory, more money in the future. So I think this is definitely one of those moves, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for them.
And it's a gamble because obviously as Chicago gets better, he might get downgraded and not be able to perform the way he did this year. So this might have been his chance to get more in his age 29 season. So it's certainly a risk. But again, if there's the added benefit or the chance of a reward of having the team be more competitive, have more money available. And so I think he also hedged that in his bet as well.
Oh, show.
And finally, we can all plug our ears, Avalanche fans, here because the Stars have re-signed Matt Duchene.
Boo! Boo!
The 34-year-old center signing what is possibly his final NHL contract, as Corey continues to boo. So Matt Duchene signing for a term of 4 years, so that'll take him up through his age 38 season at a $4.5 million cap hit. So per year, I should say. Sorry, $18 million total. But what does this leave the Stars with, folks? I just have to tell you this roster breakdown and this cap stuff because they have 17 of their 23 active roster slots signed. They have $455K in cap space. They don't even have a league minimum contract available to them. They still have unrestricted free agents in Captain Jamie Benn, Evgeny Dodonov, Mikael Granlund, Colin Blackwell, who had a great playoffs, and Maverick Bourque, who is a restricted free agent at the age of 23, someone that has also been talked about as a player that the Sharks might try to go poach with an offer sheet, and I really hope they do, for that matter. Also on defense, Brendan Smith, Cody Ceci are unrestricted free agents, and Niels Lundqvist is a restricted free agent, a 24-year-old right-shot defenseman, so he will also garner a lot of interest. Personally, I don't know, like, they've backed themselves into a corner by signing Matt Duchene and $4.5 million per year. They kind of put themselves in a spot where they have to trade Jason Robertson just to be able to pay everybody else, because that's what they've talked about, unless they can offload someone else, maybe Mason Marchment when his contract's up next year, but he does have a partial trade clause protection. So we'll see. I'm interested to see how they make this work this year because they literally do not have enough money to sign anybody right now. So they have to, like, $500K is not enough to sign anybody to any contract at any level, even for an AHL player. So I don't know what they do, but Robertson's probably on the move. They probably have multiple players who are on the move, and maybe Jamie Benn's time in Dallas is done.
Don't care. Didn't ask. Boo, Dallas. Womp womp. Anyway.
The one piece of good news about this, other than Dallas is suffering because they're really, really up against it now, I also don't see how they sign Granlund.
Yeah, I think he's on his way back to the Sharks. I really hope that that's the case for you guys. I really do.
And that is the vision. So let's just, I talked about the top 6, but can you imagine, like, you still have the sleepover line, and you got Toffoli with the kids, and they can play together. Then you draft Michael Misa to be the center, and still have Granlund on his winger. He can help center like he did for Will Smith this year, help Misa's transition and development on the second line. You have Eklund out there. You still have Chernyshov and Musty in the wings who are going to get some time. How about Colin Graff, who stepped up? And you still have Alex Wenberg for another year, and who's a potential trade candidate even. The fact that the Sharks have assets that they could offload because they have so much prospects, like, I am excited, man. Just, Granny, come home. Like, you're 33, my guy. Greer, just give him 5 years. Just pay him for 5 years and let Granny retire with the Sharks.
Honestly, we'll give you Josh Manson, and you should give us one of those assets. One of the less good ones, but, like, we'll take one. I think I just want one. We'll give you Josh Manson.
Listen, if you guys, we talked about it earlier, if you guys flub up the Sam Malinsky thing, he's another person I've seen in rumors that the Sharks could try to offer sheet.
Faux show. And I mean, hey, we'll take the assets from that. So I don't see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I like Sam Malinsky. I hope he stays, but yeah. But there you go.
But yeah, that's the biggest news, folks, is that we already knew the Stars were up against it. They are now even more up against it. And we love to see it.
We do. And everybody, like we said, we are going to hold off next week. There will be no episode next week, just so, because we already have seen the trades. Oh yeah, you forgot Nashville and the Devils traded. They did a trade. Eric Holla was traded to the Nashville Predators from the Devils for some picks. So
a good point. I was just tracking like re-signing with their own team, but I didn't even think to bring up trade details. So thank you for covering that.
It is of no surprise, everybody, that the day after the final concludes that we're already getting these movements, and of course no signings can happen, only re-signings, but no new signings can happen for any of these unrestricted free agents or offer sheets for restricted free agents until July 1st, which is again why we are holding off and looking ahead of the schedule. Yes, we'll definitely most likely be recording on July 2nd or 3rd for you to listen at that point, because we want as much to talk about as possible going into this last episode. And then from there, anything important, we will update you via our social media. So if you're not following us on Instagram, go and do that, because we'll help keep you updated on the things that you probably should know, especially when it relates to the Avs. But we want to make sure we get a lot of information coming in here, and we want to kind of bank it all together to give you one big super episode of signings and re-signings and trades and fun shit like that. Because I like that kind of stuff. I think it's fun.
As do I. And so what I'm going to end up doing, folks, is obviously the priority for Corey will be the Avalanche, and I will have a full list and go into detail for any Sharks. But I will also pick up to, I'm thinking maybe just so we don't spend too much time. What do we say, Corey? Maybe I can have a full list, but I'll pick the 10 biggest deal ones, the ones that are either the most money or the biggest impact for their team, or is a big move to a new team going to a contender type of thing. We won't be able to give you everything, I think, because it'll already be such a long episode, but I'm going to collect as many as I can and try to rank them with Corey's help as well, so we can bring you the biggest news items, the biggest ticket contracts that make a difference on the outlook of the NHL for next year. Yeah,
I follow a couple pages that post about it very frequently as they happen, and I'm always scrolling through my news feed, so I'll write down as many as I can. Obviously, we'll update you on all the high-profile free agents should they sign early on, although it's looking like Mitch Marner may not sign until mid-July, so we might not be able to tell you who he's going to by the time we record our final episode here, but we'll keep an eye out. I'm intrigued to know, but then you got like Nick Ehlers and John Tavares and several other high-profile free agents going in, so we'll see what happens to all of them.
Yeah, and you say Nikolai Ehlers, that's a guy I would also love to see the Sharks potentially kick the tires on and look into, with the amount of cap space they have. If that is something that they can pursue, that would be a player for sure that has a variety of markets, both with contenders and with rebuilds that he could fit.
Yep. Alrighty, everybody. Well, I have a 3 players of the week type thing, except it's the 3 players of the final. And for me, from 3 to 1, it's Sam Bennett, Sergei Bobrovsky. And for me, I thought Brad Marchand was the biggest difference maker in the finals, although Sergei Bobrovsky is a close second. I know why Sam Bennett got the Conn Smythe. Don't think he doesn't deserve it. He definitely does, but both of those guys are really great. And Dom was right. I think if it was just, Conn Smythe was just for the final, Brad Marchand could have had a good case to have it. Sergei Bobrovsky, once again, 919 save percentage, was instrumental in their wins. And I definitely think he deserved it last year more than ever, by the way. But doesn't matter what I think. I don't get a vote. So, ergaderg.
Well, I think your top 3 players are correct, and the clear 4, 5, and the honorable mentions have to go to McDavid and Draisaitl because as individuals, they did their thing. But when we talk about MVP, sure, they can have the best individual stat line, but at the end of the day, it wasn't enough for their team to win. So I think the not only that you selected 3 Panthers, but the Panthers you selected were the easy top 3 in my book as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Tom, are you ready for today's fun fact? I certainly am. I'm very excited for this fun fact.
I'm nervous about this quiz that I'm about to do, a pop quiz. I didn't even know what to study.
That's right, guys. I'm going to hit Dom with the pop quiz. Well, I, along with my mother, were curious as to how many times the Stanley Cup has been won back-to-back. After all, winning it once is the hardest thing possible. 2 times in a row, even more so. And some teams have managed it even more than that. But not in our modern cap era. There has been no 3-peats yet. But I thought we would make a fun game out of it. Dom, there have been 10 franchises that have won the Stanley Cup back-to-back or more, with 19 instances of it happening in history between all of these 10 franchises. Now, I don't need you to tell me when it happened, but Dom, can you name for me the 10 franchises that have ever repeated as Stanley Cup champions in back-to-back years? Whether it's, back-to-back 2-time, 3-time, 4-time, doesn't matter. Can you tell me the 10 teams who have at least gone back-to-back as Stanley Cup champions? There are 10. I think there are some very obvious ones that are easy to get out of the way, and I'll prepare a check mark for you to get them right.
So let's see. If we're thinking NHL, thinking original 6, has Montreal?
Of course, Montreal. And when you get one right, I'll give you a little bit more information here. So Montreal has done it the most amount of times, obviously. They have 5 of the 19 instances. Montreal won the Stanley Cup 4 times in a row in 1976, 1977, 1978, and 1979. They won it back-to-back in 1968, 1969, back-to-back in 1965 and 1966. Won it 5 times in a row in 1956, 1957, 1958, 1959, and 1960. And first won it twice in a row in 1930 and 31.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, original 6, I know Montreal has a proud history. I didn't realize they've won it so many times, and to win 5 back-to-back. I mean, I don't think any of us can imagine that in the modern day.
No, I don't think it could ever happen. But who knows?
Let's stick with the some original teams, some Canadian teams. I'm going to say I know it's been a long drought, but I feel like the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes, you are correct. The Leafs have gone actually 3-peats 2 different times. Their first 3-peat was in 1947, 48, and 49. Their second 3-peat was in 62, 63, and 64. So you have 2 of the 10 teams so far. Well done. Keep it up.
Well, I know this one from the modern era. I mean, so I know you want to give fun facts, so let me just rattle off a couple here, because obviously we know Florida, that just happened.
Of course.
Not too long before that, Tampa.
Yep.
And then in back-to-back years, including beating the Sharks, Pittsburgh.
Yes, and Pittsburgh also won it back-to-back in 1991 and 92. And for those who don't know, they also won it back-to-back in 2016 and 2017, beating the Nashville Predators and the San Jose Sharks. No, wait, other order. San Jose Sharks and then Nashville Predators. So, wait, am I right? Do I have it in the right order?
I think it was Predators. Ours was the 16-17 season or the 15-16 season.
Well, then that doesn't help me. Oh, God. Hold on. I'll figure it out. Hold on. Nope. Don't keep going. I'm going to figure it out. Give me like 2 seconds here. You guys lost in 2016. So it was Sharks, then Predators. It was Sharks, then Predators.
Okay. Yeah, I was really blanking because I felt like it was 15, 16. It's been a long time ago now. It's
But yes, you
hard to
have
remember.
gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're halfway there, Dom.
Well, I'm gonna go with an obvious one based on his time there with the great one. Let's go with the Oilers.
That is correct. The Oilers won it. They almost had a 4-time repeat, but it got broken up. They won it in 84, 85, didn't win it in 86, won it in 87 and 88. I wonder who won it in 86. I am curious to know. It was the Canadiens, of course. So there you go.
Well, cool. So 6 down.
Yep.
Let's think some teams that I feel
hard.
like. Detroit, the Red Wings.
Detroit has won it back-to-back 3 times in 1936 and 37, 54 and 55, and then, of course, in 97 and 98, where they came out of the Avalanche Red Wings rivalry with 3 Stanley Cups.
Wings rivalry!
Where the Avalanche only won 2 cups, and the Wings won 3. So there you go. You got the Wings. Good job. You've gotten, I will say, all of the original 6 teams that are included. You have 3 left. You're doing very good.
Okay, so I'm struggling here. I'm less confident in these ones, but between, I want to say, like 2010, 2015, before the Penguins went back to back, I want to say that in there.
You're already wrong.
I'm already wrong because I was going to say either Chicago or LA.
Well, what's funny about them is they actually split cup wins. So Chicago won in 2010, the Bruins won in 2011, and then the Kings won in 2012, the Hawks won in 2013, the Kings won in 2014, and then the Hawks won in 2015. So they never ended up, any of them ended up going back to back in that era.
But you're kidding.
I'm not.
You're kidding.
I'm not. And then obviously
I really thought.
Yeah, very strange, but that is the truth. I will say this: the most recent one now goes all the way back to the 80s. So no more modern era teams. I will say you are past modern era.
Okay, let me think about this. 80s. 80s. Were there any in the 70s that I haven't already named?
Yes, there is one in the 70s that you have not named.
Okay. 70s. I already said Pittsburgh. Philadelphia?
Yes, Philadelphia. Very well done. They won in 1974 and 1975. Now, I'll give you a little bit of a push here. In the 80s, there was a legendary, not back-to-back, but 4-peat. It was a 4-time, they were 4-time Stanley Cup champions. One of the most notable ones. Most recent 4-time Stanley Cup champion.
Minor quick rewind. Just as a question.
Yeah.
Were those 2 that for Philadelphia when they went back to back?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm remembering, or what helped me remember is that those are their only 2 cup wins.
That's a good question. Let me find out. Philadelphia. Oh wait, can I not spell Philadelphia? Oh yeah, I cannot spell Philadelphia. Okay, it's Philadelphia. Let's take a look-see here. So yeah, they were the runners-up quite a few times, but yes, that is correct. Those were the only 2 cup wins that Philadelphia's had. They have been the runners-up, though, in 1976, so they almost won it again before they lost to the Canadiens, so they almost did a 3-peat. They lost in 80 to a team that I can't name for you because that's the team you're missing. They lost in 85 to the Oilers. They lost in 86 to the Oilers. They lost in 97 to the Red Wings, and most recently lost to the Chicago Blackhawks in 2010, but they have not won since the 70s.
Okay, and you're telling me it's not Boston?
Nope.
It's not
an original 6 teams. Nope.
It's
1980. I'll tell you that the run went from 80 to 83. So 1980, 81, 82, and 83. Would you like another hint?
Give me a hint if it's Canada versus US, because
it is a US team.
Okay, so it's not Vancouver or Calgary.
It is also a team currently in the Eastern Conference.
It's not Ottawa, is it?
Ottawa's a Canadian team, and we said it was an American
you're right.
team.
I'm sorry. I'm really racking my brain here. I felt like
Here, I'll give you this. Here were their Conn Smythe winners in that year. So in 1980, their Conn Smythe winner was Brian Trottier. In 1981, it was Butch Goring. In 1982, it was Mike Bossy, and in 1983, it was Billy Smith.
Mike Bossy.
Yeah.
That one helps because I'm pretty sure he scored the series winning goal in one of them, New York Islanders.
That's right. It's the New York Islanders. I'm not going to make you guess the 10th franchise because I didn't even know this was a team that existed. It happened back in 1920 and 1921, the first instance, I believe I was seeing here, of a back-to-back win. It was the St. Louis Eagles.
Interesting. In 1920 and 21?
Yes, 1920 and 21. And technically, they aren't even technically the NHL years. If you go back here and you look, doesn't technically, it counts in some regards. I would have to look a little bit more into it because those years are really weird for the NHL, but they still count them as back-to-back Stanley Cup or consecutive champions at the very least. So
interesting.
St. Louis Eagles.
St. Louis Eagles. Obviously, that teams move a lot, but what franchise would have been born from the Eagles that would still
I don't
be around
think anybody.
today,
I think they are.
Okay.
I think they are in a defunct franchise.
Actually, so I just Googled it. And thank you, Wikipedia. The St. Louis Eagles were a professional ice hockey team that played in the NHL. Based in St. Louis, the Eagles played for only 1 year, the 1934-35 NHL season. The team was founded in 1883 as the Ottawa Senators.
Interesting.
A successful independent team that joined the NHL as a charter member in 1917. So that's actually interesting. So this would almost say that
yeah, that is
they
weird.
were the Ottawa Senators during that 2021 season. Although that's actually really interesting, the fact that there's a small delta there between the names. Either way, I'm fascinated. What year do we consider the NHL starting? Because like the modern era would be what, the 60s, or modern-ish era would be 60s onward. Would be when I.
Oh, well, I'm thinking of the cap era. When did the NHL cap era start? So the NHL cap era, yeah, that's what I thought. It started after the 05-06 lockout. So that technically is modern NHL, is after the 05-06 lockout.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's original 6. I'm thinking when we start to see expansion, was that more 60s, 70s?
That's a good question. We're going to learn some history today, everybody. First NHL expansion. That was in 67. Yeah, so you're in the right ballpark.
That's the era I was trying to think of. Is from then onward, where were we? Because I mean, original 6, obviously that was a small sample size to do. So that was like,
they added 6 franchises in 1967: the Kings, the North Stars, the Seals, the Flyers, the Penguins, and the Blues in that time.
And the Seals, of course, went on to be the Sharks eventually. Or
yes,
that
indeed.
That was from where the Sharks became a franchise and grew into their own and became a new franchise, kind of like what we see with Utah from Arizona.
Hockey reference, though, that I love to use goes all the way back to 1918 is what it looks like.
Okay. Good. Yeah, good to know. I was just wondering because I feel like when we think of like the 60s, 70s era, whenever we want to say that first expansion was, I feel like from there to like the start of the 90s was like one era, and then the 1990 or 1989 through like 2000 through the lockout was its own like era. There was like style of play, the type of players, the names that we can recall, and then obviously the modern era would be post lockout, like you're saying. But I feel like even just the decades, just the players that we think of, even some of the style has changed so much.
We're definitely hitting the end of one era and beginning to truly cross over into another with the retirement of OV and Sid rapidly approaching.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for taking that little journey with me. I know that was not part of the original plan,
okay.
but
It was fun.
Thanks for the hints as well. I'm proud of myself overall for getting some of them right.
Really good.
I can't believe Boston hasn't done it. I'm struggling with that one so much. I feel like they should have.
No, never did.
Wow. Anyway, that was fun. I had a lot of fun with that one. I hope you guys had fun listening, because I was definitely racking my brain there. That was a tough one.
That was fun. I definitely think like next season we should do some like quiz stuff. We should make a quiz for each other and see how everybody does. That'd be fun.
Who knows? We could also maybe post a quiz or something like that. We could post it on our social media before the episode releases, so people have a chance to guess the answers themselves and interact.
That would certainly be fun. We could do something like that. But yeah, that'd be fun. Lots of things to ponder going into next season. Well, everyone, the clock is counting down to the final horn. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. Did you know there is a comment section where you can leave your thoughts and questions? If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, leave it below and we'll be happy to try and answer it. There's also a unique poll for you to interact with every episode. The best thing, you can do if you like what we're doing here is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and to share this podcast everywhere you can, whether that's with your mouse or your mouth. I'm Captain Avalanche Corey.
And this is Dom from the Tank.
Check out our new episodes every week. Thanks, everyone.